So we have up here today this word. What is this word? Sabbath. What is the Sabbath? Does anybody know what the Sabbath is? No? Different for different faiths. A day of rest. Let's think about what that really means, that word, the Sabbath. And we're going to start off by looking at the commandment that the Lord gave, the third commandment out of the 10 commandments, the commandment to remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
Was told there would be time.
So the Sabbath is a day and it needs to be kept holy. Let's read now from the 20th chapter of the book of Exodus, where the Lord gives the 10 commandments. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. We have a definition in there of the Sabbath day. Did you catch that? It says, yes, Mary? The Lord rested. On what day? The seventh day, wasn't it? So let's think about what we have here. In the book of Genesis, what was the Lord doing over the first 6 days? He was making the world, wasn't he? He was making the world. So after he made the sky and the land, the sea, after he made plants, after he made birds in the air and fish, after he made animals, what did the Lord make? People. He made people. And God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good, it says in Scripture. In other words, he made everything. He made everything wonderful. He made everything perfect, everything leading up to making people. If that includes you, put your hand up. There's a few people here who aren't people. He made us, people. He made everything in this incredible world leading up so he could make people. And after he had made people, he'd made everything that he was going to make, all the different things that he was going to make. And then, on the next day, the seventh day, what did he do? He rested. Do you think God was tired? Do you think God gets tired? Probably not something that happens to God, to the Lord. getting tired. Do we get tired? We do, don't we? We get tired. And so, do you think this guy's got it right? He's resting, huh? He's resting. And so, here's God, here's the Lord, at the beginning of His Word, saying to all the people that He made, I made everything. And then when it was all wonderful and done, I rested. Which means that every, how many days? Every 7 days. You really need to also take a rest. Well, it's not always easy for it to be every 7 days like that. But sometimes do we need to take a rest? We do, don't we? What if you had school 7 days a week, every week, all year? I have a look of horror on a couple of people's faces here. Would that be nice? Probably not. In fact, there'd be a certain point where you'd stop learning, wouldn't you? Your brain would just completely shut down. You'd stop learning. It's good that we have the weekends through the year, isn't it? It's good that we have school holidays, we have vacation breaks throughout the year. Because otherwise, if we just kept going and going and going and going and going, we'd get less and less and less done, wouldn't we? We need to take breaks. And so that's what we're going to be thinking about for the rest of today, is the Lord saying to us, remember that you need to take breaks. The break shouldn't be too long. We shouldn't just spend our whole life. If this guy just spent his whole life doing this, do you think he'd have a good life? It might feel like that at first, mightn't it? But after a while, I think there's things that he needs to do for himself, for his family, and for the world. So just chilling out to music is probably not going to be what he should be doing every moment for the rest of his life. As much as it might be enjoyable while he's doing it right there. No, we need to stop for just long enough to be able to be ready to move on to what we're doing next. To get back to being useful. To get back to helping people. To get back to learning. To get back to doing other things that are important. Now, what should we do on that day or during that time when we've stopped doing the normal thing we're doing? This young guy looks like he's young enough to still be in school, probably. So say this is a weekend. This is a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon or something. For all of us, what do you think the Lord wants us to be doing on that day off? Do you think one of the things that might be good on our day off is to actually think about Him a little bit? Because remember, He made us. He made everything. I think it's a good idea if we stop every so often and we say, I remember that I am alive because the Lord made me. All of these wonderful things exist in the world because the Lord made them. So our day off, our time of rest, isn't just a time to say, I'm going to do nothing now. but it's a time also to remember the Lord. Because if we're not stopping to remember the Lord fairly regularly, we start to forget about him altogether. And that isn't healthy. Because we need to remember who made us, who gave us life, in fact, who gave us everything we could ever possibly need. Amen. The New Testament is full of stories of things that occurred with and around the Lord on the Sabbath. And we read one of those now from the second chapter of the Gospel of Mark. Now it happened that he went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and as they went, his disciples began to pluck the heads of grain. And the Pharisees said to him, "Look, why do they do what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" But he said to them, "Have you never read what David did when he was in need and hungry, he and those with him? How he went into the house of God in the days of Abiathar the high priest, and ate the showbread, which is not lawful to eat except for the priests, and also gave some to those who were with him." And he said to them, "The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath." And we conclude our readings here by turning to Heaven and Hell, a portion of number 287. Peace means the oneness of the divine itself and the divine human in the Lord, and the union of the Lord with heaven and with the church who accepts him. The Sabbath was instituted as a reminder of these matters and was named for quietness and peace. It became the holiest symbol of the church, which is why the Lord called himself the Lord of the Sabbath. Amen. So end our lessons. May the Lord add his blessing to the hearing, the understanding and doing of his word. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Talking about the Sabbath is sort of interesting in today's climate. To a large extent, society no longer recognises it. Consider how many people on a weekly basis are actively saying, in their own minds at least, the Sabbath day is coming up tomorrow, or it's the Sabbath day today. I need to keep today holy. I need to recognise it in some special way. I need to think about the Lord today. I need to set some time aside for him today. The reality is that it's very, very few people. In fact, the whole commandment to remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy, is pretty much transgressed by a large, large swath of the population. People just aren't keeping it. Now, does that mean everybody's condemned for lack of following the third commandment? I certainly hope not, or else a very large slice of humanity would be in really big eternal trouble. But when we think about the Sabbath, we start to realize that if we really start to take it seriously, that it actually represents something that we desperately need. We as people have been created so that remembering the Sabbath becomes a vital part of our overall physical, mental, and spiritual health. In the story that we read from the Gospel of Mark, it ends with the Lord saying, man was not made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath was made for man. See what the Jewish people had done, what the Jewish authorities had done. This is not such an outlandish interpretation of the commandments. Is they had said, okay, on our weekly calendar, the Sabbath starts at sundown on Friday. It lasts until sundown on Saturday, and in it nobody is to do any work. Which is basically an impossibility. Unless you have a very narrowly defined definition of work. In the story there in Mark, we find the Lord's disciples on the Sabbath. We presume that would have been sometime during what we would call Saturday, travelling through an area where there were grain fields. So it had to be sometime late summer, early fall, during a time when there was heads of grain had grown, when the fields had come towards harvest. And they were hungry. And I can assure you there was no sheets on the corner for them to pick up a snack. They did like any normal person would do. They just grabbed a handful of the heads of the grain. You can imagine it growing basically up to the sides of the road. Grabbed a handful of grain and started to munch on just the raw grain off that it was growing with. But there were folks who got really upset with this. How dare you go grab, eat? Because taking grain off the stalk was work. I think that was a little bit of a problematic view. Because I'm not sure about the rest of you, but I like eating every day of the week. I probably like eating too much every day of the week. But if I was to say, okay, every week I'm not going to do a single thing about food from sundown on Friday till sundown on Saturday, there's something that I guess it could work. And they found ways around it, of course. They had ways of preparing food in advance and having it out and having all of these sorts of things. So they found what works around the law. But essentially what the Lord said to those Jewish folks who were upset was, you don't understand why I gave you the commandment that I gave you. You don't get it. You don't understand. You have failed to understand the purpose of the commandment. You're trying to enforce the letter of the commandment, but you haven't realized the purpose of it. Because it's unimaginable that the Lord would ever tell us to do something if it wasn't in our own best interest to do so. Because that isn't how the Lord operates. The Lord doesn't say, my ego requires you to stop doing what you're doing one day a week and start to bow down to me and say prayers and read from the Word. The Lord doesn't have an ego that way. In fact, New Church teachings say that the Lord doesn't require any kind of worship or praise, but He says we should do it because we need to give it to Him. He didn't create the Sabbath in order that there may be a time when we worship Him because He's waiting for us to worship Him for His sake. He says, no, I've created the Sabbath because you need it. You require it. I gave it to you as a gift. And so therefore, it is really in your interest to accept that gift, to use that gift, to remember that gift. There's a picture of a person reflecting. As I was suggesting earlier, there have been times in history, circumstances, where people felt compelled by whatever forces, financial forces, by employment forces, to basically never rest. And there are some people today who are in situations where they never seem to be able to take a break. That their work is a 7-day-a-week commitment. And sometimes that just can't be helped. But when it comes right down to it, we as human beings need to recharge our batteries. We as human beings need time to reset, to take a deep breath, to reflect, to spend time with family and friends, to do something that is less stressful than our normal life might cause for us. We're built in such a way as to need rest, to need to stop. And so that's why the Lord was giving us this commandment. You know, it's interesting, when we are told stories in New Church teaching about what people do in heaven, and there's actually quite extensive treatment of what people do in heaven. And it's fascinating. Heaven doesn't really have a night time, because a lack of light, night, darkness would represent the Lord not being there. He's always shining on people in heaven. He's always bringing them light. But that doesn't mean it's the same intensity continuously. What there is that there is what would be the equivalent of our morning, noon, and evening. And once a person has reached the evening, they immediately start to enter the next morning, without there being night time through it. So we can imagine an angelic day, and every angel having really important work to do. Not work that's ever forced upon them, not ever work that they don't enjoy that's a chore, but work that gets to the very heart of who they are as a person, that stimulates them. In fact, they get so caught up in the work, whatever that may be, usually helping other people in some way, but There's so many things to do in heaven that we've never even imagined here in this world. So many loving, useful, helpful things. We can imagine an angel getting up in the morning or setting out in the morning and getting to work doing that loving, helpful thing that they absolutely love doing. And what we're told is that, at least within certain communities, that somebody has to almost ring a bell at a certain point and say, in effect, tools down. Because the angels so love the work that they've been given, so embrace the opportunity to be useful, to serve, that they would just keep doing it. And even angels can get to a point of exhaustion. Plus, if you keep working and working and working and working and working, at what point do you have an opportunity to stop, to read, to go to the Lord's Word, to share thoughts, to celebrate, to have recreations, to have meals with others, to have games and sports and other types of things that people enjoy doing? Now, the angels at times have to be told, okay, you need to stop your work now. You've committed to your work what you're meant to commit to it. But now you need a break. Because there's other things that you need. As I said at the beginning, when it comes to the Sabbath day as a society, I'm not talking about the church community society, but as society, as this big, larger group of human beings that we're part of, the whole idea of remembering the Sabbath is pretty much a lost concept, a lost commandment. Sure, people take time away from their normal occupations. Kids don't go to school 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. Most people who are in their working careers don't work 15-hour days, 7 days a week. Oh, it happens, no question. Now, of course, sometimes people in retirement believe they have too much time. That is a different story, although I know many, many retirees who seem to work just as many hours in retirement as they did when they were in their full-time employment. Or people who have been homemakers, who have worked awfully hard on all of those useful things that they've done all their life, and in retirement, well, it doesn't really change. There's all those useful things still to be done. So in our greater human society that we live in, we have people who take breaks from their regular thing they're doing. Kids are happy to take vacation, for the most part. People are happy to have the weekend if they're able to work a 5-day week. People are happy to take vacation time, particularly here in the summer, which is really the time when people take vacations the most. So to a large extent, people are taking the physical break. But of course, that's only one part of why the Lord gave us the Sabbath, wasn't it? One piece of it. And if we only ever take that one piece, then we're missing a whole lot of what the Sabbath was intended for. In many ways, what we're doing right here, right now, is why we have the Sabbath. To think about the Lord. To think about what He's given us. To think about what He's taught us. To reflect on his role in our life, and to experience the kind of gratitude that comes with really understanding what the Lord has done. But how many in our culture, our society, really ever take the time to do that? And so you can say, people are not really obeying the third commandment to remember the Sabbath day. The reality is it's not about breaking a commandment. It's about not receiving the gift that the Lord wants to give. Which is why we have churches. Which is why we have groups that can get together. Which is why almost everybody owns a copy of the Lord's Word. To be able to have those other important, essential things that are the reason why the Lord gave us the gift of the Sabbath. So I have a very simple task that's in today's handout. Take some time to simply breathe this week. Reflect for a few moments on what life is all about, and that there is a loving, divine plan for you. Amen.